What's going on? I'm Partyball back once more with a video on Google Stadia. And why is it another video on Google Stadia? Because damn it, I love this platform. I just picked up a Samsung Chromebook because my tablet was ready for an upgrade, and I have yet another place I can play my Stadia games, and it's now as revolutionary for me as the Switch was. It allows my physical presence to be there for family time, yet allows me to get some Gambit matches done in Destiny or pick up a game of NBA 2K real quick. If that is something you may be interested in seeing for yourself, stick around to the end of the video for your chance to win a Buddy Pass, aka 3 months of Stadia Pro. I also may do a video on gaming on the Chromebook platform with Stadia in the future, so if that is something you'd like to see, click the like button right now. And speaking of clicking things because the narrator told you to, if you're interested in content about Google Stadia and my opinions on the gaming world, click the subscribe button to get up-to-date notifications on when I will go live with new content. I want to be more frequent with updates regarding Stadia personally, and an article came out the other day discussing some in-depth stuff regarding Stadia when it comes to the underbelly of the platform. If you listen to the Stadia cast here on YouTube, they covered this topic the other day in their weekly podcast, which I'll link in the top right now. Go check out Bill and Lloyd's channel as they do great work covering Stadia, and tell them I sent you. Now, I'll be honest, when it comes to technical terms and being very specific regarding what technology uses, I suck. I might as well just be reading German because it makes just as much sense to me. However, I can decipher just enough to kind of let you know what's going on, and of course this has some interesting ramifications that I'm sure some content creators who are oddly anti-Stadia to a fault will love to tear apart. Now, I initially heard about this through the Stadia subreddit, and I'll link the article I'm referring to in this video, as well as the blog post in the description, but the current issue out there in the development world for Google Stadia ports is that there are, well, issues. Many game developers are having issues working with the Linux kernel scheduler. This article comes from Michael Larabal over at Phoronix, who is citing a blog post from game/C++ developer Maida Skarupke. Here's what Maida had to say. So this all started like this. I overheard somebody at work complain about mysterious stalls while porting Rage 2 to Stadia. The only thing those mysterious stalls had in common was that they were all using spin locks. I was curious about that because I happened to be the person who wrote the spin lock they were using. The problem was that there was a thread that spent several milliseconds trying to acquire spin lock at a time when no other thread was holding the spin lock. Let me repeat that. The spin lock was free to take, yet a thread took multiple milliseconds to acquire it. In a video game where you have to get a picture on the screen every 16 milliseconds or 33 milliseconds, depending on if you're running at 60 Hz or 30 Hz, a stall that takes more than a millisecond is terrible, especially if you're literally stalling all threads, as was happening here. In our case, we were able to make the problem go away by replacing spin locks with mutexes. So, after taking an Intro 101 course to spin locks, spin locks are locks in Linux code designed to be unlocked when a thread acquires it, allowing whatever needs to happen. What was happening in this instance is the spin lock was available to be taken by a thread, but it took additional milliseconds to complete that process for whatever reason. Now, in a world in which frames per second are crucial and having a fluid experience playing a video game is an absolute must, this becomes anarchy for the developer. This spin lock issue is a problem currently exclusive to Google Stadia because it's the only gaming platform currently using Linux-based software. Obviously, the architecture for PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo, and PC are all different. Maida says to work around the spin lock issue, they replace the spin lock with a mutex, which allows for multiple threads to use the same lock, although not simultaneously. So essentially, if thread A, thread B, and thread C need to use mutex 1, they can, but not all at the same time. So if thread B is using mutex 1, it will lock thread A, thread C, and any other threads out from using mutex 1, allowing for the aforementioned fluidity to happen. Feel free to tell me if I'm wrong in the comment section, as I'm sure I have misinterpreted something I literally tried to learn the 15 minutes prior to writing this portion. Seriously, it's so hard for my mind to comprehend, but I'm going to go ahead and move on. Now, if you're a supporter of Stadia like I am and feel personally attacked when someone trash talks Stadia, you know there's a chance you could see creators or detractors of Stadia put this down as an L for Stadia. But it's not like developing for traditional consoles has always been sunshines and bunnies. Some game developers have bashed the likes of the PlayStation 4 as recent as 2017, claiming at the time it was like working with a 5-year-old PC. The fact is, developing video games is a hard venture, so here's the good news for Stadia. Unlike the PlayStation 4 or Xbox One or any home console, Google can constantly update and upgrade its systems to be more compatible and friendlier to game developers. In fact, might have had this to say about Google's response to the bad Linux kernel scheduler. I know that we were not the only developers who had problems with the scheduler on Stadia, and Google is very aware of the problem. They care a lot about latency because latency is super important for the Stadia experience. And one of the ways they've reduced latency is to run games at 60 Hz that run at 30 Hz on console. But that means you only have 16 milliseconds to get a frame on the screen, and if the scheduler gives you a random hitch of a millisecond, you are screwed. Now, I'll get to the main point of this video and what this means. Game developers are struggling to port their games over to Stadia since the games that will fill the Stadia store for the near future will all be games developed with Stadia specifically not in mind. This has created issues with porting over specific titles. Games that have had issues that I'm aware of immediately include NBA 2K20, Final Fantasy 15, and Rage 2. Now, NBA 2K20's issue was somewhat of a minor one. It was just an annoyance. It was simply getting an update screen, which is erroneous because one of the basic facets of Stadia that is considered a very strong point in defense of Stadia is you won't be forced to worry about updates. Next up was Final Fantasy 15, which had a game-breaking save bug. Well, not so much game-breaking, but it was a save bug nonetheless. This bug would bar players from saving their progress once they hit a certain point in the game. Both of the issues found in NBA 2K20 and Final Fantasy 15 have both since been fixed. As for Rage 2, there are currently some issues for users that attempt to link their Bethesda accounts to their game file in Rage 2 on Stadia, causing their game to crash. I'll have a link to the Reddit post in the description as well as discussing a user's current issue involving the game. So if you're having issues with Rage 2, you are not alone. Now, despite these issues, and there may be another game or two with issues at the moment, but here's why the developing issues involving the ports for Stadia is actually something that favors Google, say, over a Sony or Microsoft. It's no secret that developers have a hell of a time developing games for new systems. It's why dev kits exist in the first place, so they can do their best to alleviate the issue ahead of time, and it allows the console manufacturers some time to fix problems with their console before launch. Because no technology is perfect at launch or shortly after, there are bound to be issues with the impending PS5 and the Xbox Series X when it comes to development of new games. When this inevitably happens, it may force game developers to concede their vision for their game due to the limitations in the console hardware or software that they are trying to work with. With Stadia, however, Google Stadia is a console in the cloud and therefore is behind the scenes. Always adapting, always evolving, and it's always becoming better. Sure, there are system updates that home console manufacturers can do, but from a hardware perspective, there isn't much they can do short of a mid-generation console upgrade that we see nearly every generation. Google will be the one to foot this bill and keep the worry out of the hands of the consumers. This will allow for a future of gaming that will allow players to enjoy games as they are meant to be seen through the vision of the developers. Is there a chance that Stadia ports or Stadia games will be underdeveloped to be in line with the home consoles? Perhaps. But Google is providing game developers the keys to the Porsche, as it were, to make their games the way they envisioned it. So they don't have some game developer coming out to the media and saying that their console is like using a 5-year-old PC. So what do you think about game development on Google Stadia? Does Google have the advantage over Sony and Microsoft, or am I just way off base? Let me know in the comments section down below, and if you happen to have stuck around to the end of the video to win that buddy pass, go ahead and click that giveaway link in the description below to get entered, but be quick because the contest will be a short one. I want to give you a quick roadmap of what I will be planning on doing with regards to Stadia this coming week. We just got the announcement that we're going to be getting the Monster Energy Motocross game coming to Stadia on February 4th. Probably won't do anything too much regarding that, maybe just briefly talk about it, but I kind of want to wait till the end of the week if we get more updates just in general about Stadia. Of course, CES is happening this week, and usually it's not the biggest place for console manufacturers or just video game news in general, but since Google is a much bigger electronic company, technology company than say Sony and Microsoft at this point, Google will have a much bigger presence than those guys regarding their video games, of course. So we may see something about Stadia there, and I'm definitely thinking about doing some kind of prediction video regarding Stadia and what I may see coming this week, if it's at CES or just happens to go in line with CES just because they're in the news. But be on the lookout for a little prediction video, and I do have a feeling we're going to get some kind of Stadia update just from the community managers over on the Reddit, as well as just in the Stadia community pages over on the Stadia website. But of course, stick around to this channel, get subscribed, of course, like this video, all that jazz. We are here to talk about Stadia and whatever interests you in the world of gaming. Just let me know. Again, the Buddy Pass giveaway happening right now. If you want to try Stadia, this is how you do it. Giveaway link in the description. Until next time, thank you as always, and party on.